morning.
Good morning. So, welcome to Inner Archaeology. I'm Sarah.
And I'm Emily.
Yeah. I'm so fired up this morning.
I can already tell that you're having like a traffic jam, like in your brain.
Yes, because it's like all of the thoughts. I'm like, where do I begin? Where do I begin?
Oh my God,
Which is not always the case. A lot of times we hop on here and I'm like, what's happening?
Sometimes I feel like my brain is blank. There'll be times like in the middle of recording a podcast, I'll be like, there's nothing going on in my head.
Whoa. Does that happen in real life?
Not often. No, I don't know. It just is like, I think it's because I'm so aware. I'm like constantly aware of like more intentional in this conversation than I am, I think, typically in like a regular whatever conversation. So I'm kind of always aware of the thoughts that are going on and things I might say or questions I have. And then every once in a while, I'll just like go blank.
Oh, I don't know. I totally.
Do you know what I mean?
Yes. It's like there's like some weird pressure or something that makes it. Because I actually experience that sometimes when I'm on mentorship calls where it's like, okay, it's your cue and you're supposed to say something poignant. And then all of a sudden I'm like, I got nothing.
There's nothing. Yeah.
It's like the pressure or something of it all. Just like
you kind of like short circuit. Like you need like a little break or something like that. Maybe it's that. Yeah.
I totally get that. Also happens when I'm recording YouTube videos. I'm wondering, did it happen when you did like theater stuff?
Well,
or it's so rehearsed that you're just on autopilot?
It would only happen if it was like improv for sure. But like,
what a skill set, really.
Oh God. There's an entire show. I think Will Arnett is like releasing a show and it's about like a police station or something like that. And the entire thing is improv. And I'm like, it's just, that is like impressive on the next level.
That's why I love Middleditch and Schwartz. They're so amazing. You know this guy? I showed them to you?
Yes.
I showed it to you and I got you to watch it and I was there and I think you were just like, I don't know, not in the mood for it or something.
Well, yeah, because I vaguely remember it.
I think I was like laughing before like the punchline because I like knew what was coming. So I was just like ruining your experience. I was like, okay, wait. So I had a really fun conversation on the way back from Mammoth this past weekend. And I wanted to just like share some stuff with you, but also because I think you'll think some of it's funny, but also, I don't know, kind of figure a few things out. So we're driving back from Mammoth. It's like a 5-hour drive. And I kind of get everyone into the Enneagram because the Enneagram is my favorite personality test. And I think it's because the results kind of focus on like your own internal like motivations in the world, which is interesting to me because that affects how we behave, how we engage with relationships so much. So I'm getting them to do their Enneagram tests, the people who are with me. And I like love hearing people's Enneagrams. Also, I only know the numbers of the people who I have like in my life. So at this point, there's still a few numbers I like know nothing about. But we had this really interesting conversation because one of the girls in the car with me, she and I relate a lot. It's so funny because we're very similar in some ways and very different. And in some of the ways that we're similar is like our intensity, our anger, our relationship with anger. And I kind of was like cracking up and like wishing that you heard the conversation because she was like, I love anger. Okay. Anger is amazing. I get shit done. It protects me. It keeps me safe. It feels so good. Like, why? Why would I ever want to get rid of my anger?
Oh my God.
I was cracking up because I was like, I so relate to this. And I told her about the conversation we had about our fight, flight, and fear and how mine is fight and it comes out in anger. And I'm just like, I don't really want to get out of this. And so we were talking about that. And she had an interesting question because she was like, my partner thinks that I have anxiety, but I'm not sure that I do because I'm like I'm like just wound up tight, I guess. So she's like, so I'm not sure what anxiety feels like, I think, or if I experience anxiety or if it's just stress. And so it was interesting because I had never thought about this before, but through asking her questions, and I have struggled with anxiety and also really love the feeling of a high beta state. And so we kind of just were talking about like what the difference is. And where we landed is she was like, oh, I don't experience anxiety. Because to me, anxiety feels like doom. It feels like you're going to die. Nothing matters. It's actually like almost hard to talk about because I feel like it like comes up so easily.
It can like get kicked up. I know. It's so true.
Because what she was talking about, I think, was like a high beta state where your adrenaline is going, your norepinephrine is going, you're feeling like you can get shit done. It's not really something that you can maintain forever, but it's like the intensity, the state of emergency, the fight. And she was just talking about how good it feels and how she feels like she can get so much done. And so in this conversation with her, we really teased out how it's different from anxiety, because anxiety, at least for me, feels like an overwhelming sense of doom. Like I'm scared to cross the street. I'm scared to engage with people because they don't feel safe, even though it doesn't matter who they are. I feel like I'm going to die. Panic attacks feel like death.
Right.
Like, it's like the worst. And so when I was explaining that to her, she was like, oh yeah, I do not think I really experience anxiety. I think it's like this other thing. Yeah. So that's kind of like some of it. It was very funny.
It is an interesting thought because for me, hearing you talk about the distinction between, I guess what we're referring to as high beta and anxiety. And for me, if I get into high beta, almost every time it clicks over into anxiety. And the difference though for me is what you're saying, high beta feels like you're getting shit done. It's like a force of energy. Whereas anxiety for me is crippling. It's like you start, I don't know, just short circuiting or something like that. So it's not, when I have anxiety, I don't like exactly what you're saying. It's this doom. I feel really crippled. I can't do stuff or get things done. But it's interesting because mine sometimes, and I'm wondering if it's because high beta does sometimes feel anxious in the body. And I think sometimes in my brain, I'm like, oh my God, am I having anxiety? When really I just like had too much caffeine that morning, you know? It does get a little convoluted there with like how it feels, I think.
Wait, I'm so curious because I feel like you can get into high beta and not feel anxious. I want to hear more about that.
I think you absolutely can. I'm just saying for me, I don't know if I'm good at just staying in high beta. It's like I'm in high beta for a bit and then I'm anxious. And then I just like click over. Yeah.
Interesting. And so you don't ever like the way high beta feels? Like you don't have like a high energy, ultra focused state of mind where you're like, I'm getting so much done right now? I mean, I could see that. I'm like, are you sure?
Because to me, maybe we should define high beta more.
Yes. I was thinking that as well.
Yeah, because for me and my understanding of it, it's like a state of mind I don't want to be in.
But that also makes sense to me when you say that, because you don't like being in like revved up energy, period.
Because when I'm in that high beta, I don't feel focused. Like I feel high energy and I'm just fraying out and I'm not focusing and really like actually like getting stuff done. I do feel like I can get into streams of energy, like flow energy, creative flow energy, which is like if I'm working on a project, it's calm. And I like that. It's calm. It feels really meditative. You kind of lose track of time and I'm very productive, but I'm not wound up. I'm actually like really like grounded and calm.
Okay. I mean, then when you say all of that, I'm like, okay, yeah, that checks out for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Checks out for me in regards to my personality.
It's on brand. Yeah.
It is on
brand. Which is like really interesting to me though, because I don't know, like I was cracking up hearing her talk about all of this because I just related to it so much, especially the part of really kind of like loving it, knowing that it's like can be dysfunctional and harmful, but like also being like, that's my bud, yo. He helps me get shit done. It was so funny.
I love that you like connecting with somebody on that, because I feel like if you have a good grasp on consciously understanding what it is, like being like, oh, I'm in the space and knowing how to work with it, because a lot of times I feel like when I am encountering whoever and they're in high beta, it's actually like really abrasive and sometimes they're like aggressive and like they're not nice to be around. But I feel like I've been around you in high beta, and because I think I like understand you and I know you are understanding your state of being, I'm just like, okay, let's do it. Like I'm just like trying to support your like your energy.
Some people would say, yeah, some people would agree with you, but some people would definitely be like, yeah, your high beta is fucking obnoxious. Definitely.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah,
I'm
I
like,
mean-
I don't have time to explain this. I don't have time to sound like nice or cute. We're getting shit done. Everybody assume the position. We're
Yeah. Yeah.
It's not, I don't know.
See, now when I'm thinking of when I used to teach theater
Mhm.
and when we were putting on a performance, that's a good example of like me being in full high beta, having to get shit done, having a million moving pieces, and it all has to like come together for this performance. And I would do that. And I call that my director mode. That feels really good. And it feels really appropriate in that setting. It feels really understood in that setting. So I think it's like kind of easy for me to get into that space when I'm doing performance stuff.
It's just so interesting because we all have these nuances to the way we experience things. That's what I love about things like the Enneagram or whatever. And actually, it was really crazy because we then found all these Instagram posts where we were kind of digging through different, like, you know, like the people who have the accounts where they basically like compile things where they're like gifts to get your Enneagram 1, gifts to get your Enneagram 2. And it's like to their personality.
Yeah.
And it was so funny because some of them were so spot on. We were like crying, laughing. And also, this is like such a fun thing to do with your friends because one thing that I really felt like is I think they really enjoyed it because you feel so seen.
You do, yes.
It was such a like feel good, exciting like thing for us to do to like pass the time. And so there was a point where it was like, how can you make your 1 or 2 feel loved? And it was crazy because for mine, it was like, buy her a plant. It was so funny. It was like, tell her you appreciate her. Like, these are my things. And then it got to somebody else and she read hers and it was like, tell them you appreciate this very specific thing about them. And when I heard it, because it's funny because you hear the other people's and you're like, that doesn't really resonate with me. Like that wouldn't like make me feel good.
Right.
But she was reading them because I was driving and she said the thing for her and I go, oh. And I repeated it back to her, the thing, and she immediately like got tears in her eyes and like choked up. And she was like, oh, fuck. She was like, whoa, that hit me like right in the heart. And it was so unexpected. And I was like, oh my God, I love this stuff so much. Because I remember like reading about yours and kind of trying to like integrate it into how I showed up for you because it's just so different. The things that like resonate for you or her or whoever, it's like doesn't click for me, but I'm like trying constantly to like remember to do the thing in somebody else's. Love language is another way of like doing this, you know?
Yeah. I agree. Like I love the Enneagram for that reason. Like it kind of gives you these categories. And I do like that the Enneagram has like wings so you can have like multiple because we're so multifaceted. But I do love it because we tend to, and just like subconsciously, habitually, we see somebody and we want to love them the way that we want to be loved, right? Yeah. And we immediately transfer ourselves onto people. And this is just like how humans move through the world. You use somebody as a mirror and you transfer your feelings, your intent onto them. And it takes like conscious awareness to like recognize when you're doing that and choose not to do that and truly see the person and meet their needs or whatever there. I think we were both first digging into the Enneagram kind of at the same time. And I was like finding out that you were 2. And I remember I would like send you stuff. I'm like, look at this. This is like, does this resonate with you? Whatever. And I remember whenever you had sat down and read about Enneagram 4s, which is my number.
I tell this story all the time.
Yeah. You were just like,
because I thought I knew you so well.
Yeah.
First of all,
like,
I'm like, I know this woman.
See you in a completely different, like,
yes.
Yeah.
I was like, wait a second. I remember thinking like, Emily, is this real? Like, I felt like I was like bringing it to you. Like, is this true? Tell me.
Yeah.
And you were like, yeah, it's really true.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my God.
Oh my God. Yeah. It's so funny. It is like what you said. It's like so validating because there were things that I learned reading about the Enneagram, about 4s, that they were things that I thought were faults, like character faults and negative aspects of self. And I was reading it and I was like, oh no, it's just like I've got like a different tendency towards really like romanticizing things and stuff like that I felt really like judgmental towards myself about. So it was like it gave me permission. I think to really like love myself and other people in their uniqueness in a deeper way, for sure.
Totally. It's helped me. I didn't know we were going to dig so far into the Enneagram. I feel like I got to say this because I don't know. I just got to. I love the Enneagram, but I don't know. I don't oversubscribe to it. So just throwing that in there real quick. But the thing that I do love about the Enneagram is because there's so many wonderful people like putting together interactions with other relationships, especially. Like it's helped me so much be better to the people in my life whose Enneagram numbers I know. Like for example, with Ben, so much of his number is about like safety, stability, security, trust, loyalty. And it helps me be more patient in areas that I think otherwise get frustrated with him, because I've heard enough now where I'm like, okay, I need to create a safe place for him to be vulnerable. Yes, that is super obvious and like across the board for everyone, but for him, it is like essential.
Critical.
It is essential. And when I'm all fired up, my like tendencies are not to create a safe place because I get big and loud. And so for me, it's like a practice of just knowing that about him. So I don't know. It's fun. If you don't know your Enneagram number, it's definitely fun. It's definitely fun to know the people in your life. I think also like learning that my dad was a peacekeeper actually recently kind of allowed me to rely on him for like that strength, because I knew that it's something that he really values. Because when we did the Enneagram with him, we read the Peacekeeper and he was like, yes, he gets a lot of purpose in his life, I think, from creating peace, especially within like our family. And so like literally I was like, I'm not going to rely on my dad, blah, blah, blah. I'm a grown ass woman. And then I was like, you know what? I think this actually is like what he loves to do for his family. And so I like went to him. He showed up in the like such a strong, amazing, like peacekeeper way. And I was just like, I don't know. It's just such an interesting tool that I've really loved. And there's been so many beautiful insights.
I agree. And there are like free tests online. I would say though, I always recommend to people when they're going to take the test to take it with somebody who knows them really well. Because it's all about what you said in the beginning. Like it's the intent, it's your intentions behind your behavior and how you show up in the world. And sometimes, I mean, I know I experienced this because the first time I took the Enneagram, I tested completely different than a 4. I think I tested a 7. And because I liked the idea of showing up in the world that way. And so I was answering questions around an ideal, and it was all very like, so I like wasn't even really aware of it. It was just like, oh yeah, that's how I want to show up in the world. And then I'd answer it that way when it wasn't, how do I actually show up? And that's why it was like really helpful to sit down with somebody who really knew me and went through it. And then I was like, is this how I am? Or do I do this? And it was super interesting to do it that way. But like with anything, I think it's important, especially with any personality things, or even when you're getting into like zodiac stuff, anything that's going to try to define you as a human. I think it's so important to be aware of when things are resonating, because you're like, yes, that exists. And then if you ever feel pressure to somehow become or change or conform to fit into a certain category, that's when it becomes problematic, I think. And that's like not the point of it. I think the point is to take the stuff that resonates, and the stuff that doesn't, you just like leave that.
It's like the point of life, man.
Yeah. Because I do feel like I've seen people get upset almost because they're like, oh, I've got to be like this. Like I've got to be more this way or something. And I'm like, if that's not resonating with you, then that's not anything to like put pressure on yourself about. Take what works and leave what doesn't, you know?
I feel like that's so often what I end up doing with people I do mentorships with when I'm mentoring them is like, really teasing out the things that they're doing based on values that are not their own. And I find myself like a lot of what I'm doing that's like really impactful is like giving them permission to not like chase that thing anymore and just doing it their own way. And it's so crazy because we don't encourage each other and ourselves. There's no point where we like sit down and we're like, what are my values really? And if you're not taking the time to like really reflect on stuff like that, you just end up going about your life doing exactly what was told to you was important by your parents, society, whatever. And I think that's when people have midlife crises.
Yeah, when they're just replaying
That's when they're like,
the
fuck
same
it, I'm buying a
narrative.
fancy car and I'm like getting a motorcycle.
Yeah. I do have to say though, people who go through like the paradigm shift of whether it's like leaving a religion or even like people who are like coming out and completely having like a paradigm shift that really divides you from your upbringing. I do have to say that the main function of that shift is reassessing values. And we've talked a lot about this, like, because you kind of gravitate towards people
culty
like
people.
that. People who grew up in cults. I remember I had to like literally sit down and sift through it all. I had to just be like, okay, what is mine and what isn't mine? And I imagine that people that don't have any kind of crisis that would throw them into that kind of paradigm shift and process, the stagnation must be like really heavy. Like when you're just lost in this murky and not actually having something that's pushing you into making those conscious decisions. And it's so cool that you're giving your mentees like an opportunity pulling that out. Like, well, let's ask these questions. Because I think it's critical to being a realized version of yourself. Like that is like fundamental to like go through that process.
And I think this kind of, we touched on this before, but it like comes back. This whole thing is why when there are things in life where something becomes so uncomfortable that you have to like release yourself from these things, it's definitely a blessing.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's like a whole thing. So I did want to talk about, and I don't want to like transition too hard. So we'll see if this feels like something you'd like to dig into with me. But I do want to talk about, because it's kind of been happening for me lately. I mean, it's been happening for me for like years, but it's been on the top of my mind recently, is the idea of, I feel like you and I have a lot of vocabulary, and the way that we communicate is honestly so different from most people in my life besides Ben. But that's because, I don't know, I met Ben after knowing you. So like when we started like
developed in that way.
Our relationship has always had this vocabulary about things like things being kicked up, there being parts of myself, trying to find underlying core beliefs and conflict, asking about the stories that you're telling yourself when you are experiencing triggers. These are all just things to give what I'm talking about some like context. But because it's not really how most people talk or even think, it's really hard, quite frankly, to have conversations with people who aren't doing this. Because like, especially when you experience conflict with like a friend, for example, what I have experienced is that oftentimes people think that I'm being condescending. And I think really like a big part of what I'm realizing is I have to not necessarily try and take people like on that journey without their consent. But yeah, it's just something I've been thinking about a lot lately. Basically is this question: how do we have conversations that are not harmful? Because that's ultimately not the point, with the people in our lives who don't necessarily like think about stuff like this, without coming across as like self-righteous, condescending. Because I mean, I have been trying. I don't know. It's just been on my mind. So I don't know if you have any thoughts about that. But
I do, like a bunch.
Let's hear them.
I think it is really like an important thing, especially when navigating conflict, because I think navigating conflict is one of the most obvious areas where having conscious emotional awareness benefits, right? Because you're able to be fully kicked up and be like, I'm kicked up. And it creates a completely different experience when you have emotional awareness and conflict. But when you're dealing with somebody who is kicked up and in conflict and doesn't have languaging or awareness around what's happening, and they're responding from all their protectors, all the parts of them that are like protecting, it's hard because you're not having a conversation with that person. You're having a conversation with their defense system, you know?
Yes.
It is tricky when you see somebody and you see what's happening. You can like kind of see what's going on, and you see that they're getting kicked, especially if there's somebody you know. You see they're getting kicked up. You kind of understand the context of it. You understand their behavior and their patterns.
If you know them really well, you even know some backstory. You're like,
yes,
I feel like there's a story here that goes way deep about you not feeling respected in general. And I want you to know that I respect you. And I see that's like, you know?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And the overarching thing is you see this person's in pain. And I remember there was like a phase in my life that I did like what you were talking about. I was taking people, I was like forcing them on this journey of becoming aware of their triggers and their protectors and all this stuff. They didn't consent to that. And it never went well. Like it never
doesn't
had
go well.
Because like my intention is I want to help you not feel so much pain. And I know becoming aware of this stuff for me has helped me not feel like so much pain and so out of control. And so I want to give you that too.
Exactly.
But like learning that awareness has to come from like, it has to be initiated from within somebody. It can't come from outside of them. That was like a big aha moment for me. And I really was like, because I feel like I was kind of like driving people in my life crazy. Like there was like this period of time that I think I was like pretty annoying. Maybe I still am. But I remember like shifting, but it's uncomfortable. Because what you have to do is you just have to sit with people in their pain. And that is hard, especially if they're attacking you. It can be really hard to sit with somebody in their pain when their protectors are on the defense and you are the target for the pain. And it doesn't have anything to do with you a lot of times. A lot of times it just has everything to do with all this backstory.
Totally. It's also really hard, I think, because especially for people in my family specifically, there is a dynamic of like, it's actually really interesting. We have a dynamic of like explosive anger, saying really hurtful things that we don't really mean in our anger because we're experiencing pain. And so we want to cause pain in the other person. It's like, that's what's going on there. It's super childish and immature. I do it too. 100% have gotten much better over the years. But the dynamic is that like two people coming together, doing that, it creates pain and harm. But then we don't really resolve it. We just go our separate ways, cool off. It doesn't even take that long, really. Sometimes it's like an hour. It's very fast. And then we come back together and we're really sweet and tender and kind. So I've been talking about this a lot with Ben. And it's interesting because while that is not healthy, there are some really incredible things that come from it. One, I feel loved during conflict. You can be screaming at me, saying horrible shit. I still like don't doubt that you love me. With people who are like really close to me. And because of that, conflict doesn't feel catastrophic. Even when it's like big and scary and angry, I'm like, okay, I just like have a core belief that you still love me, which is not true for someone who didn't experience that, i.e. Ben.
Yeah.
So anytime we have a conflict and I get really big and scary and angry, he's like, do you still love me?
Yeah.
Because people who I think love me wouldn't get like this. But then there's the other thing that goes on now because I don't get big like that anymore. And because my family lives across the country and we see each other not a ton, like we don't have a ton of conflict like this anymore. And also I don't really participate in it anymore as much as I can. Right. But the thing is what happens, I've noticed, is when I don't join them in that big, scary place. And I experience this too. Like when Ben doesn't join me, I actually like that creates insecurity in me because I'm like, oh, you don't care. You think you're better than me. The stories that come up are you think you're better than me. You don't really care about me. And like, do you even love me or see me? It's crazy. And so I see that happening too when I get into a big conflict now with my family and I don't participate in the old way. The thing that comes up, it's like almost makes them like more upset and angry and confused and mad and you're awful and you're self-righteous and you're condescending. I just find myself being like, I don't know what to do. So I just go like, I love you. You're amazing. Yeah. But like that is not well received.
Fuck off.
Fuck you. Like
Definitely. It's
which
so fascinating to me.
I just have to clarify, like, I have been that person too, where Ben is like calm and like, what's happening here? And it just makes me bigger and more angry and upset. And like, he's not taking me seriously. And it's just such a mind fuck.
Yeah. So can we unpack that a little bit?
Yeah, please.
Let's unpack it. Okay. Yeah. So you saying that in the middle of like explosive conflict like that, you never had any doubt that that person loved you, and almost like So it would be active negative bid response, right? So it's like really aggressive, really negative. But it seems that I'm understanding that the active part of it, that engaging is like connective in some way. You're like, see me and I need to be seen. And it was like a way to express yourself and connect. So it was really important for people to mirror each other's energy, to like match that energy, right?
Yes. Yes.
Which would make a ton of sense that if you weren't mirroring and matching that energy, it would feel like all the things you said make so much sense in this scenario. And especially because so you experienced these explosive ruptures, and even though you didn't verbally hash through and do repair, you guys did do repair in your own way by like coming back and being really tender and sweet. It was like a type of repairing the energetic tension. And then you kind of like soothe that. And so there is a gift in that you feel like conflict is okay. You can have conflict and still actively love somebody, because like I feel much more similar to Ben. Like I didn't experience that kind of conflict. And if somebody were to yell at me, I would just be like, this person hates me. There's like no other timeline. And it's because I also never engaged that. Like I don't yell at other people. I don't engage that way. And so it's like a completely different family scenario. And it's interesting that you and Ben are having to navigate this like very kind of polar conflict. Because from what I understand for Ben, it's like avoidance. If there's conflict, nobody talks about it.
You go to your own rooms and you're quiet and you don't talk about it. And like, that's not healthy either. But it's interesting because
they're like two sides. Yeah.
We've found a really great way of dealing with this is what I do is I say, I'm like, Ben, I really need to let out like a lot of frustrations. And I don't think I can control my tone. And I have a feeling I'm going to yell, but I don't really mean to be yelling at you. I need you to do whatever you can to protect yourself right now. And then I ask permission. I'm like, can I go to this place? Do you have it? And anytime I've like remembered to do that, it's been so amazing because he's just like, yeah, like let it out.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I'm frustrated because of this. And he doesn't feel as attacked because he knows that for me, sometimes it's really hard to communicate like big frustrations. And the thing that's also interesting about it is that another part of this layer of this is that I don't feel like, and this is true for me and Ben, that I don't feel like if I say it calmly, just like normally, it's not like acknowledged. Like it's like the magnitude of the feeling isn't acknowledged unless I get big. And so I don't feel like seen and heard until I'm like, this is a big fucking deal and I need you to pay attention to it. And then he's often like, whoa, okay, I hear you. And I'm like, I've been saying this now for like 2 weeks. You know what I mean? But I said it calmly. Yes. You didn't really take it in. Nothing changed. There wasn't a lot of acknowledgement. And here I am getting big and angry. But the thing is the part about like saying things that are bothering me, us, whatever in my family, when it's like small, doesn't happen. And that's like a new thing and something that I hope we grow into over time, because ultimately the thing that makes people big is a pain. And I care enough to know what it really is and to like be there and try and address it. Anyway, sorry, what were you going to say?
It makes so much sense that as a child, you learned from observing and then also out of necessity, in order to be seen and heard, had to get like really big and loud, right? And like that's how you got seen and heard. And so it makes sense that you feel like in order to communicate the depth and severity of the situation, you have to repeat that, right?
Yes. It's so, wait, it's funny because there's a story I used to tell because I thought it was so funny. My littlest sister, she's actually a cousin, but she came to live with us when she was like 6, 7 years old. I was like in college at that point. And I used to love to tell this story and I hadn't thought about it in a while. But we were all at dinner. I'll never forget it. We were at P.F. Chang's, our whole family. There's a lot of us. We're big. And I don't remember what led up to it, but I'm sure she was trying to like say something and be heard. And then what she did was she stood up in her chair to like get big physically. And she goes, you guys, I'm trying to say something and I can't get a word in this family. And we thought it was like the cutest thing.
Right.
And we were just like, oh, that's how you get attention in this family.
Yeah.
Good job.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And I thought that was hilarious, but it also makes sense for the siblings of mine that I do have that they don't like doing that and they don't do it. And it must be hard to like,
yeah.
Because if you're not the kind of person who like wants to get big to be heard, which I definitely have people in my family who are not, just thinking about how that must be really hard. And you must feel like not seen a lot.
Not seen. Yeah.
And it's not great to feel like you have to like scream at the top of your lungs to be like seen or heard. In some ways, I find it really endearing, like in that story.
Yeah. And it's like, I mean, families, quirky, like, I don't know. It's just kind of like we develop methods of communication. And then there's like the questions of when is it like harmful? Like, when does it start becoming like harmful to people? But like, it almost reminds me of just yesterday, my girls, Evie and Lila, they're 8 and 10. They were like fighting about something. And I was finding myself calmly asking them, please stop, whatever, like, and not being heard. Right. And for all, parents will know this, but it's not hard to imagine that that's when, like, I've said it 10 times and nobody's listening. And that's when I lose my shit and like yell at my kids or whatever. And I don't like that. Like, that doesn't feel good.
But sometimes it like has to happen, I think.
Oh, well, it happens. It definitely happens. But
I think I think sometimes it has to happen because like we're just like not perfect. Like I think it's why I don't know if this is true, but it's why Ben says that he read some study that like women cry more because like men are unaware of their like emotions. It's like a and I'm like,
to have water coming out of my face so you get what's going on. Yeah. Yeah. But what I did yesterday, I guess what I'm wanting to offer is like when you're wanting to be seen, there are other ways to be seen than getting really loud. Like you're trying to get an auditory connection with somebody and like your little sister standing up on the chair, she was trying to get visual recognition, right? So she made herself big and loud to get attention. But I do feel like there are ways that you can use your words to ask somebody to connect with you. And then you don't have to get big and loud to get their attention. Because when you're big and loud, what you do is you essentially like startle somebody or you scare them, and then they're like, oh, I see you. It's like a lion over there in the corner. Like my amygdala's flared up or whatever. And so what I did with my girls yesterday, they're not hearing any of my calm, quiet, please stop. I walked into the room and I said, I need you both to sit down and to look at me, just like really calmly. And I said, I have said repeatedly to stop doing this. And this is going to be the last time that I say that. I do not want to yell. I don't want to get angry. That doesn't feel good for any of us. So we are going to right now agree upon a consequence if you guys continue to behave this way. So what do you think is an appropriate consequence? And they're like, oh, you could take our iPads away. And I'm like, okay. Because I'm asking for eye contact. I asked them to calm down, to look at me. And then I'm like, do you agree with this consequence? Yes, mom. Yes, mom. And then we moved on and it was fine. And they like resolved their thing. But what I had to do is I had to get them to make eye contact with me. Like I just like had to get them to be like, and so I do think it takes effort, like a lot more effort than just hollering. Because when you're exhausted and whatever, like, that happens. But I guess I'm just like wanting to offer there are other ways to be seen and heard and to ask for what you need. To be like, hey, mom, dad, sister, whoever, friend, I need you to see me and hear what I'm saying right now. Even with like partners, because I feel like for me, it wasn't like yelling, but it was more of like an emotional response. Like in order for me to feel like I was communicating the severity of a feeling, I had to get really emotional and cry and everything to feel like that was being communicated. And I remember that felt so exhausting. And I would just say over and over, like, why do I have to make this huge display to be seen? It feels so awful and exhausting to me. Like I want to just be able to... But I do think there's a level of like asking for that cord of connection.
And that works sometimes. Yeah. I'm just saying, I do want to like always, I don't know, touch on the fact that like that works and it's worth implementing because I feel like I've implemented that with Ben because we have the shared vocabulary. I literally will say to him sometime, hey, I need you to receive this, or hey, like, can you be here with me right now and really take what I'm saying seriously so I feel seen and heard? I say that to him and it's like not weird. But I don't say that
this
to
goes
people
back
in my
to your
family.
first point.
Yeah.
Yes.
And also
that doesn't.
Sometimes he's in a place where he's like, okay, yes, gotcha, I'm here. And sometimes he's in a place where he's worried about work and it's just like, it doesn't land. Yeah. And so it's just like a practice. And I think it's worth it to like have it. But again, it really does come back to having the like languaging. Also, I'll say that a younger version of myself wouldn't have felt worthy of asking for this thing, because I definitely have, and it's funny because it was like one of the things in like a core beliefs around Enneagram 2s is asking people. I mean, you can speak to this because you've seen it in me in the last few years, but feeling worthy or like I can ask people to like meet some of my needs is like really hard for me. And I see it also in people of my family, because I think this is just kind of an old school thing, maybe, where we were kind of taught to just like not have needs. And like it's kind of being perpetuated by the whole like be self-resilient, get all of your source of energy and satisfaction and self-worth and self-love like completely from yourself and not from anyone else. You know what I mean? And so it's really vulnerable to say, hey, I need you to like, I don't know. One that comes to mind is like, I need more words of affirmation. Do you know how lame I felt acknowledging that initially? Because I was like, I shouldn't need words of affirmation from my partner.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I should just, get all of that from myself. And like, that's the message we're hearing. I think that we swung too hard that direction and we're going to like swing back and be like, actually, we need each other. But yeah, so it's like, not only is there like a missing language, but also I feel like I know I used to not feel like worthy of asking for the things I really needed in those situations. So I didn't have a way to ask. I didn't feel deserving to ask. It's like a lot. It's a lot.
Yeah.
It's a lot. I feel like people will resonate with that because I think I see it a lot even in my students. I see it a lot in my friends, like as they're kind of like growing and stuff. I think it's really common.
I remember talking about this whole thing with you like way back when. And I do think that there's like maybe it's like another perspective to look at around, because there's the feeling worthy of asking for your needs, because exactly what you said, it's a very vulnerable thing to say, like, I need you to like X, Y, and Z to
tell me you think I'm attractive. Do you know how awful that feels to say to your partner? Not good. But why? Like, why is that feel so awful? It's because it's vulnerable and scary, and you're acknowledging that, like, maybe you want something that you've been told you should totally get from yourself. But
I do think that it's another way, though, another perspective to look at that is you are giving a gift. You are giving your partner a gift of being like, I know you want to love me. I believe you want to love me as best as you know how. And here is like how you can do that for me right now. Because like anytime I've had like somebody clearly say, I need this from you, I'm always like, I think most of the time my reaction is like, thank God. Okay, yes, I could do that. I would love to do that for you because I love you. And I'm so glad you gave me that, because now I know what to do instead of shooting in the dark, you know, about like how to love you. So there is this like other side of it where it is like, it's also just like a gift for your partner or your friend or your family to be like, this is how I feel loved the most. And you know what? This singular question is one that I think is barely ever asked. And it would like fucking change the world if people just started asking this question in their relationships. Well, first, it's like twofold. It's like, do you feel loved by me? And what can I do to make sure that you feel loved by me? And just asking that, I ask that question to my daughters because like I'm loving them the way I think that they receive love and the way I want to love them. But like asking them, like, how do you really feel loved? And learning, like, one of them they just want to sit in my lap and they want me to hold them for like a long time. And that's how they feel love, is like physical affection and touch, you know? And so, but that one question, like asking the people that you love in your life, do you feel loved by me? And what can I do to make sure you feel loved by me? Would be amazing, because we have this like assumption that we have to be experts at loving our partner like that without digging into it and really learning how to do it. And it's an important part. But I do think, unless you have any thoughts about what I just said.
Well, I kind of wanted to hear how you feel loved.
Oh, how I feel loved?
Yeah. I know, it's a thing that's like really like, and that's what I love about the Enneagram insights, because that's like what we were like asking essentially in the car.
Yeah.
We weren't like, how do you feel loved? But it was like, well, yeah, actually, that was one of them. And it was so crazy how powerful it was. Anyway, you don't have to share, but I think it would be like
I know
interesting.
exactly what it is. And it's a big one because it's also my love language. So it's pretty pervasive. But anytime you give me words of affirmation, like you're doing a good job. Like Sarah wrote me this book, that bestie book where you just like filled in like I love you because and like you feel I just was like like crying.
I didn't even hear anything about it from you.
Oh, you didn't?
I was like,
I didn't mention
no,
it.
You
it's
didn't
like my
mention
favorite thing. I just like have it right on my nightstand. I'm like, like, cause hearing that words of affirmation to me is like the top, or hearing like, tell me who you see me to be. Because oftentimes like being in my own self, I can have such like a warped sense of self sometimes, especially if I'm feeling bad or down. And like having you say, no, this was really successful and you are doing really great over here. I feel so loved by that. It's a lot of like words and things like that, but also your perspective on me. But that's definitely it. What about you?
I mean, it's me too, because I think for a long time I was resistant to the fact that my love language is definitely words of affirmation, because to me, hearing words of affirmation feels gross. At least it used to, because I thought it was like, you're so pretty, I love you. But it's not. It's like more nuanced. And it's so funny because it's something that did not exist in Ben's life. So he has no concept of it. And we were playing this game like a while ago. I think I told you this story, Dear Lord. One of the thing is duels, and you like make two people duel. So you like pick two people and then it will like have a thing. And one of them was like giving the best compliment or something. Okay. Actually, it was like two other people. And Ben was like, I got this. And he jumped in and he like gave this compliment. And we were like, what? And then it was so funny because then later it led to this whole conversation where he's like, so what makes like a good word of affirmation? And I had never thought about it before, like putting it into words. And I was like, it's actually like the specificity of it. I think
really
like a big
somebody.
part, a big part of it is the part that is like not generic, which is what he had done. And it was so funny because there was other people in the group. Everyone was going around like giving their best compliment in like quotes or whatever. And some people were just so bad at it. And some people were really good at it. And so we were all like laughing in a good, kind-hearted way about this and then like having this conversation. Anyway, side tangent. But for me, it's definitely words of affirmation and feeling like seen. But a big one, and this is what the Enneagram 2 is all about, is like feeling appreciated. Because like for me, I like love to do big things for the people in my life. And I hate to admit it. But I like kind of need to know that they like see it. Yeah. You know?
Like when you like write somebody like a cute little book and it's like important for them to acknowledge that
I wasn't even thinking that, but yeah. Oh man. No, but that one is like, I didn't know that resonated with you. Because it's funny because like I did that little book because that is like what I receive. Yeah. And as I was writing it, I was like, oh man, am I doing this just because it's like how I receive love?
Yeah. No, I fucking loved it. I fucking loved it. And that makes sense with the Enneagram too. I'm trying to think Enneagram because the 4s are the individualists. They want to feel special. They just like really like want to feel like they're somebody special, you know? So that I think that definitely is like a thing for me. Like I want to feel like I am special and in a certain way. Not replaceable, not recreatable, but just like truly unique and special in that bit, which is funny being categorized as a 4.
It's like, it was actually
all the other
really
4s
funny.
are like, fuck that.
I asked my students of Write Your Way to Freedom what their Enneagrams number were, and it was like all 4s.
Yeah. I remember that. I was like, hi, 4s.
I was like, wait, this is really funny. We got a whole group of people who don't want to be categorized. I know.
Don't put a label on me. I'm special.
Yeah. Do you remember what your segue was? Or
I do.
Okay. Like, do you want to go there?
Yeah,
I'm
because
interested.
like a big part of bringing this whole thing up was how do you talk to people that don't have the same language? You know, like what do you do there?
And I still don't know.
Still don't know. I feel like we've kind of are like
it's fucking
skirting
hard.
around the topic.
Good luck.
But I think it's worth digging into because I think what it comes down to, or a big portion of that, is what is your core desire? understanding like what the desire is there. Because if the desire is to, like what I mentioned earlier, help this person grow and learn about themselves and see themselves with more awareness, that can tend to backfire. Even if the desire is for them to not hurt, that can also backfire because they're hurting.
Real quick, I'm going to give you an example just because.
Give me one.
It was just to share an insight around me and like why I am doing things the way I'm doing them. I mean, that's one of them. It was just
trying
like
to
share an
define,
insight.
like I'm reacting differently because of this.
Yes, it was like that. I was like, I'm
Yeah.
just trying to not behave a certain way. And then the reaction is, oh, well, you think that the old way, or like it just feels like a criticism, especially because like, look, we're talking about our families here quite a bit and like where we learn things. And it's hard to not hear that, I think, and think that it's a criticism when I really don't mean it as a criticism. I just mean it as like, this is my experience and this is like how I like observed it and how I felt and how it makes me see the world. I think that's just how we all are. And I'm curious about it and I like talking about it, but I don't think that everybody likes talking about it as far as what's going on here. And they also, people sometimes hear like blame or like I'm saying, I don't know. Yeah. So it's all of that.
Yeah. So, okay. So it is interesting that, so somebody is behaving in a way that you've chosen consciously to no longer engage in that behavior and saying that. It makes sense that even just saying, even if it's like you, like for me.
I didn't say it though. Anyway, but keep going.
This is more hypothetical, I guess is what I'm saying.
Right. Okay.
So identifying, hey, this behavior felt really bad to me ultimately, and like it's something I don't want to engage in anymore, and I want to like shift into something else. Again, that would be hypothetical.
I know. I'm just like, but I'm thinking about how like that is so obviously triggering for someone. That would like trigger me.
What I'm saying is I feel like that's what might be being heard. When somebody is energetically choosing not to engage and mirror in the way that another person is used to because they're growing or changing, it is going to immediately shine the light back on that person and they're going to feel insecure. They're going to feel like they're being judged. And it's all this stuff really. But what it is it's an internal narrative where probably deep down the little hurt version of them is like, wow, it probably would feel really great to not have to like be so big and angry and to be seen and stuff like that. So there's layers there. But I guess I'm just saying the reaction you got might make sense. So then the idea is like, how do you like avoid that?
No, well, so I guess the question here is thinking of like a friend or something where you don't, because what I end up doing for the most part is when I don't have the languaging or something with a particular person, a friend, I kind of just don't talk about this stuff. And then our relationship ends up being not quite what I would love for it to be. You know what I mean? It's still good.
Yeah.
It's just like thinking about old friendships.
Level.
But it stays at a certain level. And of course, all the people in my life I would love to get to like a deeper level with. But I think what I'm really, I guess, touching on is that not everybody wants to or is ready to do that. And I still don't quite know how you have that conversation with someone.
Yeah.
And I'm sure so many people struggle with this.
Yeah.
A lot of people just stop talking to their family or friends. I mean, there are definitely friends that like I've just lost touch with because we're just like living in different worlds now. And maybe we don't have an answer, I feel like, but it's something that I don't really want to like give up on.
Yeah. I think it's worth saying having internal boundaries, just like knowing I can't talk about this topic. This is a topic I don't go to with these people because it doesn't end well and we don't see eye to eye here. So we just like, there's an internal boundary there and external, I guess. Right. But like, I do feel like when I'm engaging with people that we're not maybe like-minded, we don't communicate the same way, and we're trying to connect, what I do is I don't expect to be seen. Like I don't expect to actually be seen in that scenario.
There it is. Yes.
Because if I'm asking somebody to see me and they can't do it, it's going to be frustrating for everybody because they're not in that space. They're very much in their own experience, right? And they're having their own thing.
Yes. And I think that's like the pain that a lot of people experience and I've experienced and is so common when you leave the nest, reassemble who you are. And then you go back to the nest for like, I don't know, the holidays or whatever. And it's really hard. And I really think it's like this thing that you just said. And I think that when you get to a place, because that is what's brought me more calm overall, especially engaging with people who have known me when I was like younger or whatever, is like not needing to feel seen
by them. Yeah.
By everyone in your life. I think
Yeah.
that's like, it just takes a level of confidence.
Absolutely.
But also making sure you are being seen somewhere else in your life. Because if you're not being seen by anyone, that's painful.
That's problematic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my God, I have lived in that space. That was like my life when I was in that relationship living in the South. I was like, oh my God. That's like actually like torture, is to not be seen, I think, by anyone around you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I actually think you like nailed it. I really do think it is that. But you have to feel seen in other areas of your life for that to be okay.
Yeah. So it's like gauging the scenario, like in this circumstance, am I going to be seen here? Is my way of thinking? And if the answer is no, or received or anything, like can this person even hear what I'm saying? And a lot of times it's like, no, they can't. So what I tend to do is I just like ask a lot of questions. I let them be the star of the show. They get to have front stage and center. It is all about them. And then I just am going to be interested in what they're saying. And I'm just going to ask them a lot of questions. I mean, I don't do this for everyone. Like there's some people that I'm like, I can't talk to you.
No,
but, but if it's somebody that I like care about and I'm wanting to engage with
your
them,
life. Yeah.
And I don't expect there to be balance. I don't expect there to be this.
That's important.
Yeah. It's going to be way asymmetrical, but I've learned like I can actually hold space for that to a certain extent in some experiences of that, I guess. And just like, oh, tell me more about that. And then reflecting. This is a great thing to do. Like what I hear that you're saying to me is that like you're really upset about this. Am I understanding that correctly? Like just saying back to them what they're saying to you. And especially if somebody's fired up and upset about something or venting about something. I don't know. I do the thing like you tell Ben to do. Put a bubble on. Like you just put a bubble on. Just put a bubble on. And honestly, actually, asking questions and reflecting what somebody's saying back to them could be more helpful than pointing stuff out or explaining things or explaining what you see. Because I mean, I've had so many conversations where somebody is all worked up about something and I can see pretty clearly the issue that's happening. But what I do is I just ask questions and reflect back to them. And sometimes I could kind of like guide it and they'll come to that conclusion themselves. But it's so much more powerful because they like arrived to it themselves by just me asking whatever questions are coming to mind during that. And that's where I've shifted from the trying to like show people or convince them or take them on this journey to just asking some pointed questions, and they might go there on their own and that's great. They might not. But then it is really, really so important to have boundaries because that can be really draining. Doing that for people, I can't be engaged in that a lot.
No, that's super draining,
and I'll feel awful.
Yeah.
And then there also is something to say because there are people that loop through the same shit over and over and over and over again, and that can also be really exhausting. And when that happens, I tend to say, hey, I've noticed that you've said this quite a few times. Like, and this seems to be something that's like happened over and over again. It seems like that's like a really big deal for you. What do you think that is or whatever?
Yeah, I kind of want to circle back to the imbalance thing because it's interesting. I've done that in friendships like easily. There was a previous episode where we talked about this, where I had a friend where I remember distinctly making a decision. I was like, if I want to continue being this person's friend, this was so long ago, but I was like, I have to like see them as they are and not continue to be like disappointed or frustrated when they're just being themselves, and I can like love them as they are and set my expectations around that and continue being their friend or just like not be their friend because it was like so pain. There was like a period where it's just so hard to be their friend. And it was like, as soon as I set my expectations to be like, this is going to be just a little imbalanced and I'm going to be there for them and I fucking love them because I do. I like love them so, so much. And they are one of my favorite humans like in the world. But I just like, I had to do that. I had to like set my own expectations. And I think that is also a huge part of it.
Yeah.
And I think that's actually something that I've run into trouble with in my life It's not something I really do so much anymore, but I definitely did it in my early 20s where I think the people I like love most, I have really high expectations for. I mean, this has also like gotten me in trouble with like romantic relationships because I tend to see like the potential of a person rather than who they actually are. And I'm like, I've like fallen in love with the potential of a person, you know, where I'm like, oh, but that's like, they're like not ready.
It's not
to
real.
Be that.
It's actually
and it's
not real at all.
Yes.
It's kind of a delusion.
Dude, it's so fucked up. But I think it's because I don't know. I think highly of people. I really do. And so, yeah, I don't know. I just wanted to circle back and touch on that because I thought it was a really good point that needed a little bit more like pulling out.
Yeah, I think what you touched on about managing your expectations in relationship is huge. It's just like the thing is are you really seeing this person for who they are standing in front of you right now?
Mm-hmm.
And what are the appropriate expectations to have on this person? And like the whole thing, that falling in love with people's potential, this is like a chronic issue, I think, that is happening for so many people. And so many people experience so much pain and disappointment and wasted time, like just time spent in this delusion.
Well, I think a key thing is that sometimes you don't see that that's happening to you. And the clue, what I have found the clue to be, is that you're constantly disappointed at them in the same area over and over and over again. And then the question becomes, why are you still disappointed in this area? Maybe that is the best they can do in this area. Mm-hmm. If you're constantly disappointed with the same thing, they might be doing the best they can in that particular area. And you have to acknowledge that. But that takes time to realize. I remember one of my partners asking a series of questions. I'll never forget it. We were like digging in the garden. I was asking questions. And then I was like, oh, I found the limit in this area. At least for now. And I was just like, and it's not what I thought it was. And it was kind of a mind fuck. Because I was, again, in love with their potential. And this sounds really like condescending, actually, because it's not like I think that it's not they could be better than they are. It's like I see them already as really amazing. I don't know.
Yeah. No, I get what you're saying.
Because there's two ways to look at this. And one is really condescending. Like, I'm like, oh, this is it. This is all you're capable of doing. Where that's like not how I feel at all. What it is so much different. It's more like I already assumed so much from you. I already assumed your capacity was greater. I don't know. I'm sure people feel that way about me too.
Yeah. It is really like seeing somebody where they're at and recognizing that all that disappointment that you're experiencing is on you because you're the one who created these expectations and delusions. And now I'm not talking about things that are like,
it's hard, right?
There are things around agreements in relationship around like not intending harm and things like that that are like, you know, it's not like, I had this expectation that you were going to be faithful to me and I'm realizing that it's not that. Like that's bullshit.
No, that's different.
But yeah, it's more like maybe like there's like an intellectual or a spiritual threshold where somebody's
or an emotional,
like an emotional threshold. Yeah.
Threshold. But the other thing is it's not even like one is better than the other, really. It's like, I'm going to circle back to the Enneagram, where you just like see the world differently. And so when you keep showing up and you expect them to see the world as you see it, and then they don't, and you're constantly disappointed in that.
Yeah.
It's on your expectations.
I mean, I do feel there has been so many instances where I've seen somebody who has a pain or a limited belief about themselves. And so they show up in the world, I think, as like a smaller version of them because of this pain that they're holding. And I feel like, I feel like I've encountered that where I've been able to see this more actualized version of them showing up more confidently, more powerfully, bigger in the world and falling in love with that too.
Yes, that is actually the best description.
Yeah. So it's more of like a whole realized healed version of somebody. But the truth is like you have to be able to see people in their pain and their limitations and their fears and like love them there. But then the other thing is, are you in a relationship that is growth centric? Is that a core value in your relationship where you are growing and healing and stuff like that? Because I feel like I've also experienced that. Like there are people that I could see the pain, I could see the potential for growth and healing, but that's not what they're interested in right now, you know?
Yes. And also, or sometimes what's happened to me is they are growth centric, or it's like they like the idea really of being growth centric.
Yeah.
But they're not really ready, willing, or aren't in enough pain to like move to like the next step.
Yeah.
I really think that, I mean, all of my relationships have ended because I've outgrown them. Not like I'm better or like moving forward and they're not, but like we've just grown differently because of this lack of growth priority. But also I think truly because me getting sober required so much growth.
Yeah.
I like had no fucking choice to stay where I was, right? And so I think because of that, there was just like a few years that was like rapid change and growth. And because of that, and I think that I don't know, I just don't think that without that pain that I would have grown as fast as I did. Because I had to. It was like such a catalyst.
Survival. You were like fucking surviving. Yeah. And that makes a lot of sense. Like it makes a lot of sense. You're going through this massive life or death crisis. and
your
answer
know how people survive that really.
To
like,
grow.
When you hear people who like.
And a lot of people don't, like, honestly, you know, and just like, and your answer was to grow. And it also makes sense that required you to move at a pace that people who weren't also in crisis were not going to be keeping up with or like engaging
or
with.
have any desire to be a part of. They're like, yeah, I'm good. That's like, like why would, if things are working for you as they are, why would you like do all of that?
If there's no pressure to, if you're not feeling that like pressure and that being constraint. I love that analogy. Is it like lobsters? It's some sort of sea crustacean, but they like outgrow their shell and they get really uncomfortable and they have to like go find a new shell. But they have like this in between time where they're like naked in the ocean and like really vulnerable.
Super awkward, and then they find
vulnerable. And they find like a bigger shell. And I feel like I like identify with this little crustacean, you know, because I do think that there is like these like rapid growth phases when you experience crisis. You have this phase of rapid growth. And then afterwards you have this naked, insecure, vulnerable about this new space that you're going into. And then you get more grounded. You find a new shell and you get more grounded. And then that like keeps happening, you know, and you like outgrow the next. I am really interested though in the idea of growth that is not inspired by crisis or pain or suffering.
That's next
I'm
step.
really,
that's
really interested in that. Yeah. I feel like that's next level, like evolution into like an emotional
and that
space.
I completely agree with that because I've been thinking about that a lot too. I think you have to have experienced the like growth from pain, maybe. I don't know, maybe not. But I don't know, like, without looking back and having that to, like, call on, you know what I mean? That experience. I don't know that I would know, like, what the potential for growth could be without pain. Do you know what I mean?
I think initially, but kind of in my life right now, I'm like, I kind of would like to, like, grow because I'm acknowledging. And maybe it, like, you get to a place where it's more, I don't know, just more of a conscious, like, I want to push myself in this area. Here's an area.
It's like I want to come from like a place of being empowered rather than like, I'm a piece of shit. How do I dig myself out of this hole?
Like, I'm going to barely survive this. Yeah, like definitely. But I do think that a big thing to say about the enemy of growth, I don't know, that's a strong word, but is comfort. When you're comfortable, you don't feel like pressure to evolve. There almost has to be this like hunger for it, this desire to pursue it. Almost like a hunger for learning. It's like this hunger for like personal growth and like understanding the self. But I really like want to cultivate that. So it's not just inspired by crisis or pain, but that it's like, it's more of like a value and it's something I pursue consistently.
Yeah. I feel like that's where we are. Is like having a hunger for growth outside of like needing a catalyst. And I think that that's why we're literally having these conversations at this point. But again, I just think that it comes from like, I don't know. I feel like I have a strong context for what growth looks like. You know what I mean?
What it feels like. Yeah.
Yeah. What it feels like, how it's possible. The idea of what's possible has like just exploded in the last 4 years. it makes it exciting, right? So it's like growth from like an exciting place rather than take yourself out of that
know
whole
what it
place.
is? Yeah, know what it is? It's self-trust. That's what develops.
Yeah.
Right? Because you go through crisis, you're like, I'm going to die. I'm not going to survive this. Then you barely survive it. You realize you grew and you evolved and you're like different, more actualized. And you go through that cycle a few times and you begin to develop this trust where you know when I'm in pain and crisis, I know that I can grow. Like I know what has happened in the past is that on the other side of this, I'm actually going to be better because of it. I'm going to be a more authentic version of myself. But then it's like you do start building this trust that you can do it, you know, and then maybe like you get to this place where you no longer need the crisis to like launch you, but you can just go on the adventure, right?
Totally.
I like that.
Yeah.
I like that a lot.
This was nice. I needed this conversation.
Yeah. I feel like we got places.
We got places.
We got places in it.
It was good. Yeah. I don't know. There's just still so much on my mind in all of this area. And I think that it will, I don't know. I'm also like really interested to have done this podcast for like 10 years.
I know.
And look back and be like, oh, that was so cute. What you thought? That was so cute.
I know. I know. There's,
that has also been my experience is to just look back at younger versions of myself and be like, you're doing great. And then feel like I've come so far.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
I'm excited for all that. So who knows? We don't claim to know anything. We just talk about shit.
We know nothing. Yes.
I know nothing.
Yes. I do know, though, that we have a Patreon.
Yes.
If you guys want to check that out, I kind of want to get in a habit of mentioning that because we've got some great episodes on there that are released every other week.
Lots to catch up on at this point.
Patreon.com/inner archaeology. Yeah. Check us out there. Yay.
I love you.
I love you so much. This is good.
This is good.
This is a good one.
It helped me. I needed this, so thanks.
Yeah.
All right. Till next time.
Yeah, till next time. Bye.